be me, is what you see in my energy. I'm real with myself, I don't conform to society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me to stay true to my identity. I'm free to be me, I'm a person of integrity, something that's not recognized in society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me. It's the key to my serenity, conform to social norm. I'm doing me, I'm working to become the best version I can be, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Don't you see, it's the recipe to live happily, joyfully, peacefully. I live with myself, I deal with myself, I'm real with myself. Don't worry about nobody else. So don't you see I'm okay with me? It's what you see in my energy. It's not about popularity. Yeah, cause I'm free to be me. It's what you see in my energy. I'm real with myself, I don't conform to society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me. It's the key to my serenity. I'm free to be me, I'm a person of integrity, something that's not recognized in society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me. It's the key to my serenity. I'm a person of integrity, something that's not recognized in society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me to stay true to my identity. I'm free to be me, yeah, cause I'm free to be me, yeah, cause I'm free to be me. Hey, hey, it's the key to my identity. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Bougie Wild, and welcome to another episode of Transparent Table Talk, a place where we speak about life from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place to show you all that we all go through the same things. How are you all doing today? Y'all make sure you all go check out bougiewild.com. Make sure y'all support Transparent Table Talk. Transparent Table Talk could not be possible without the support of their viewers as well as the guests. So if you all get a chance, go check out bougiewild.com for some awesome, amazing motivational teas. Let's get into the episode tonight. We are excited to introduce our guest. You guys, we were in Belgium last Tuesday. Today, we're coming from Vancouver, British Columbia, and that's in Canada. We have Susan. Susan is a grieving mom who shares her story to help others learn about grief and how to support each other in it. She is a certified grief educator, coach, and workshop leader who is passionate about building empathy through grief. She is determined to normalize grief and sees this universal experience as an opportunity to deepen relationships and bridge divides. Let's welcome Miss Susan.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for being a guest on Transparent Table Talk. How are you doing today?
I am really good, actually. I'm really good. This is the thing with grief. Some days are good, some days not so good. Today's pretty good.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great to hear. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Susan, and then let us know what brought you to Transparent Table Talk.
So, I am a grieving mom, as you said in my intro. My son Ben died when he was 22 in September of 2020. And as you can imagine, that shattered the life that I had and put me in a position where I had to build a new one. And I really have come to see that if I can talk about my story and talk about what happened to me and how grief worked,
Mhm.
then it helps everybody else who's either going through it or supporting someone who's going through it or going to be going through it at some point because we don't talk about it. And that's what brought me here because I thought anybody who's prepared to have a transparent conversation about this topic that, for whatever unfathomable to me reason, we don't talk about,
Mhm.
I had to be there. So
Mhm.
that's how I ended up here, was just this drive to find places where people were willing to open this conversation that I think we all desperately need to be having.
Right. So, what are some things that you experience with not being able to talk about grief? Will you speak to the other people that are going through what you went through?
Yeah, so what happens because we don't talk about grief is when you have a loss, and I'm talking about all kinds of loss. So for me, I label my loss catastrophic. I lost an adult child. That was catastrophic to me. But in the years, especially since COVID, we've all lost tons of things, right?
Yeah.
Many people have lost loved ones. Many people have lost multiple loved ones. We've lost our sense of normalcy. We've lost, for some reason, everybody seemed to be going on a vacation in spring and summer of 2020. I don't know what it is about that year, but everybody lost a vacation,
Right.
right?
Right.
People lost their jobs. So I'm talking about all kinds of loss.
Yes.
And what happens when you land in grief is that nobody knows what to do,
Hmm.
and nobody feels like they know what to say, and nobody feels like they know how to support you. And so a lot of people end up doing nothing, even though they really, really care and they really, really want to help. The fear of doing the wrong thing is so intense that they end up doing nothing.
Hmm.
And what happens then is that the person who is experiencing that grief and loss ends up isolated, and they end up lonely, and they end up grieving the loss of friendships on top of whatever loss started the process. They
Hmm.
end up feeling like what's happening for them isn't normal, and they think they're losing their mind
Hmm.
because it can be really intense physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all the things is really intense. And so, because we don't talk about it, and then people don't know how to show up for you, you're all by yourself having this really often scary experience.
Hmm.
And that just to me isn't okay.
Hmm. You know, I'm speechless. I'm speechless because I mean the reason why I'm very transparent. I'm
Mhm.
speechless because that makes a lot of sense. And last week, couple of weeks ago, we lost someone that we know, and we pointed out that we're all surrounded, like when it first happened, and
Yeah.
up until the funeral, right? Up until
Yep.
the celebration of life, we're there, we're present, but we thought, we were like, what happens when everybody go back to their normal life, when
Yeah.
everybody, that's what you just explained. And that's why I never looked at it from that perspective, that the individuals don't know what to do. And then the person that experienced the loss, their life is shattered, and like you said, you become isolated because people don't know what to say. And
Yeah.
so that is great that you are willing to sit on transparent table talk and talk about it, because you're that voice. You're taking your experience and help healing those individuals, and help educating and informing those of us that are on the outside looking in on what we need to do. So, what type of support, Susan, would you say that an individual that has experienced the grief, what type of support, like what would we do? I mean,
So so there's all kinds of things that we can do, and you're exactly bang on in your description, right?
mhm,
Up until the funeral or the celebration of life, the people are there. Everybody shows up. Your fridge is full of casseroles you will never eat, right? I'm here to tell you nobody wants those casseroles. Maybe somebody does. I don't want to speak for every griever. I didn't want the casseroles. So everybody's showing up as best they know how, and then whatever memorial experience you're going to have happens, and everyone goes back to their regular lives. And the griever is left still in a life that's shattered, because the service usually has happened within days or weeks, and their life is going to be shattered for months or years. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to provide that ongoing support. And what I say to people when, I have people follow me all the time who say, "Oh my gosh, my friend's whatever just died. What do I do?" And my first question is, how close are you to that person? If you're not super close to them, then showing up in those early days is fabulous. We need support in those early days. If you're close to them, I sometimes encourage people to not show up intensely in those early days when everyone else is there. Because if this is someone who's an important part of your life that you're trying to support, if you show up for them a month after their loss, or 2 months after their loss, or 6 months after their loss, or a year after their loss, that is a huge gift, because they're still grieving. They're still trying to figure out what on earth is happening next, what happens every day. They're still trying to figure it out. And if you can show up then to say, "I'm here for you. I don't know what to say or do, but I'm here for you. And can we go for a walk? Can we go for coffee? Can I just come and sit with you?" I really encourage people to try and think of something that they really love to do. I was working with someone the other day who was supporting another person who'd lost an adult son. And I said to her, "Well, what do you really love to do?" And she says, "Oh, I really love to do renos." And I said, "Okay, well, could you do anything with that?" And she said, "Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Like, the person I'm supporting hates the color of their bedroom. So they go home every night to their home, and as they're going to bed, which for lots of us in early grief especially is really challenging, like that whole relationship with sleep gets uprooted. She steps into this room that she hates." And I
mm,
said to this person I was working with, I said, "What what would happen if you just reached out to her and said, 'You know what? I know that bedroom is causing you stress. I love painting. Do you have a color in mind? Can I go pick up the paint and come over and do it next weekend?'" And that's what she did.
mm,
And that gift, so that when, as a griever, you're going to bed in a sanctuary instead of somewhere that elevates your stress level, that's massive.
mm.
But we don't think about that as being a gift you could give someone who's dealing with grief and loss. So, really, for me, the message always is, do something from your heart, do something that's something you uniquely can offer,
Mhm.
because we're showing up for someone because we care about them. We
Mhm.
want to build connection. We want them to feel supported. So if we're doing all the same things that everybody's always done, we can do better than that.
Those are some great tips. So just to recap, like you said, do something from the heart. Do things that that person like to do, to bring joy to them, to keep them in a great headspace. Because of the transition, it does take a lot from an individual that is experiencing that. Before we go to break, because I want to ask you this before we go to break. Um, as you experience the grief and you were going through these things, when was that aha moment? And what I want you to do is hold that until we come back, because I want you to give the viewers some tips on how start coping with it on your own, because
Yeah.
now you're helping people. So that's what I want you to do. And we'll be right back. Let's get a word from our sponsors.
Hey, what them jiggy ladies say? For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. What them jiggy ladies say? For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. Matter of fact, power up, bite down, gon' G, bite down, gon' G, bite down, gon'. Hey, what them jiggy ladies say? For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. What them jiggy ladies say? For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. For my line, fall in. Matter of fact, power up, bite down, gon' G, bite down, gon' G, bite down, gon' G. That liquor got me all on my top. Them jiggers got me all on my bop. That liquor got me all on my top. Them jiggers got me all on my pop. Hey, G to the
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. The question that I was asking before we went to break was, what was that aha moment? Because like I said, now you're helping people.
Hmm.
And I want us to get to that, because I want to give you the opportunity to tell people what you do. And so what was that aha moment for you, Susan?
So I feel really lucky in that I had my aha moment very early on, like within days of when Ben died. And my aha was that I was only going to survive this loss. Like it literally was on the level of how am I going to survive this? And I was only going to be able to do that if I could stay conscious and curious. So that became my like North Star, conscious and curious, conscious and curious, conscious and curious. So what I mean by that, just to unpack it a little bit, is the consciousness for me was around the emotions. I knew I had to feel everything
Mm,
and that I couldn't put any of it in a box. I couldn't shove any of it away. I had to find a way to survive in that tsunami, right? And that's the best way I can describe early grief.
mm,
Those early days, it's a tsunami. My daughter used to say, it's all the feelings all the time. And it is that overwhelming sense of like all the feelings all the time, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I had to hold myself in a place where I was okay feeling and allowing all of that. Because I just knew if I tried to like squeeze it down or put it in a box or, do whatever I was supposed to do, that would destroy me.
mm,
And the curiosity was about trying to make sense of it all and trying to just stay in that place of curiosity and not let myself shut down and get stuck in overwhelm. I think for a lot of grievers, especially if it's a really something that I would call like a catastrophic grief, and everyone gets to decide that for themselves. It's not, I don't care what the name of the relationship was to the person or thing that you lost. It's how it lands for you. So if you're having one of those losses that feels like it's blown up your life, I completely lost myself. So I also had to grieve like the loss of my own identity and who I thought I was and how I thought the world worked. So you're grieving multiple things. And I knew for me, if I let myself get overwhelmed by that, that was another thing that was just going to break me and I wouldn't be able to recover. So I had to be able to hold that space of curiosity. And honestly, I don't want to sugarcoat how horrible it is. It's absolutely as horrible as you think. And some days the curiosity simply was, how on earth am I going to keep breathing?
mm.
And that was
So
it.
you
So
mentioned
it's
you mentioned you have another child. How many other children do you have, Miss Susan?
Just one. So I have a daughter who's now 28, and my son died when he was 22.
Okay. So what is it like from, you know, as a parent, because I'm a mother of four. I'm a mother of
Hmm.
four, and I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah.
And I guess this conversation is so difficult for me because as a mother, I'm sitting here listening to you, and you're speaking so strongly about it, and I'm grateful that you have taken this position, because when we get this call, and just like in your introduction, you're like, I'm out in the world, I'm talking about this is something we don't talk about, this is something we need to deal with, and just to
Yep.
have this conversation, as you can see, it's difficult for me to talk about. So,
Yep.
let's just make that very clear. Because
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. And I'm a talker. That's why I got a
Yep.
show, because I like to talk. So, when something got me speechless, it's like, okay, what do I say next? How do I say this? So, I'm approaching this from the standpoint of being that mother with that other child, because
Yep.
there are some mothers that lose their children when they still have other minor children.
Hmm.
So, what advice would you give them on how to deal with it? Because, like you said, I realized this early. I got to live in this. I got to go through this. I
Yep.
can't put it in a box. I can't ignore that it's not happening. I'm going through this. Is basically what I heard you say. So,
Yep.
what advice would you give to those mothers that lose children, and but life goes on because you got minor children?
Yeah. And I mean, life goes on because life goes on,
Right.
right? And it's
Mm,
complicated when you're also trying to support loved ones who are
mm,
also grieving. So, one of the things that really helped me is I had to allow the way that she was grieving to be very different from the way that I was grieving, and
mm,
for that to be okay. And I also realized very early on, and I don't remember if I read it somewhere or anyway, I had this realization that she and I weren't even grieving the same person,
mm.
because I'm grieving my son and she's grieving her brother.
Right.
And those two relationships are very different. And my kids were really close. So she's also grieving, one of her best friends and the person who was supposed to be helping plan her wedding and, all of these things that they had planned for their futures together. So that was part of it, was just giving her permission to grieve the way that she needed to, and to ask from her permission for me to grieve the way that I needed to. And so that's, of course, easier if you have older children, right? Because we could have that conversation as adults. I think you can have that conversation even with minor children, with quite young children,
Mm-hmm.
because part of the normalization that needs to happen is that whatever you're feeling is okay. And that you're feeling something different than me or at a different time than me is all okay. And we'll just show up for each other as best we can in any given moment. And that's enough. And it's interesting, in a course that I was doing as part of my grief educator training, they were talking about the divorce rate among parents who've had a child die, which is astronomically high. And what they're finding is that parents don't divorce because the child has died. Parents divorce because of the judgment they hold about how each other are grieving.
Mm.
So if you can get to a place where how you're grieving is okay, even if I don't understand it, like my daughter has grieved very differently than I'm like you. I needed to talk it out, and I talked to anybody who would listen
Right.
all the time. She didn't want to talk about it. So we talked about it very sporadically. But she's on her own path and I'm on my own path. And so we can share our experience, we can share what's up for us, but it's not helpful for me to judge if she's doing it right.
Mm.
And that's a weird thing that happens in grief. We don't talk about it, and we don't really talk about how it really works. Like, people don't tell you about all the physical symptoms you're going to have and all the mental things that are going to happen. People don't talk about that. But there's all kinds of judgment about whether you're doing it right, which is so odd
Mm,
and really hard for me to understand because nobody's in my shoes and
mm,
nobody's in my experience. And even another parent who lost a child in a similar way at a similar age isn't going to have the same grief experience as me.
mm,
So it's this universal thing that happens that also we all experience very individually, and it's different each time you grieve. So this, like, I have grieved both of my parents, I've grieved grandparents and uncles and friends and, husbands of friends. So this was not my first grief experience, which I'm grateful for because I had some tools in my toolbox, but it was entirely different than all the others. And whether that's about it being a child and it being that out of order death and being a sudden death, all of those things add up. But every experience leads to grief, and every grief experience needs to be allowed to be okay. And so that's the advice I would give. If you're in a family that's grieving, it's critically important for everyone's version of grief to be okay.
mm. That's some wisdom. That's some great, and it's a great advice. Great advice. Like I said, this is something that we don't discuss as a society.
No.
It's but it's a part of life. But that's
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is we need to learn how to uh, grieve and allow the next person's grief to let them experience it, just to let them experience it, just like in any other part of life, in how we see things or how we deal with things, because we all deal
Yep.
with things differently. We all deal with things differently. Um, like I said, I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that you took this initiative to go out here and start talking about this topic, and that is grief. Um, so, what if you could have a conversation like talking to me or just talking to an individual? What is that conversation like? Even just sharing with me as a mom, that you would say if someone could have that conversation with you. Um, if you were having that conversation with that person, what would that conversation be about grief? And I know we've talked about what you've been through, but just to
Mhm.
so we can understand, because you shed a lot of light on it. I could just sit here and listen to you talk about it because it's like, I mean, you're waking me up, it's nothing like awareness, right? It's
Yep.
nothing like awareness. And that's what you're doing. You're bringing awareness to it, to where even I can look at things from a different perspective. And like you said, after the service, we know now that, a month later, we need to check on people, you know?
Yeah. And I would say, one of the biggest gifts you can give people, okay, if you have someone lose a person, here's a good tip. Put the date in your calendar with an annual repeat and
Mm,
just send them a text message a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later. They remember. And this is one of the fears I hear all the time, that people don't want to remind the person. Like, people don't want to remind me that Ben
mm.
died, right?
Right, right. So they
I
don't
will
say
tell you,
anything. Mm-hmm.
I know every second of every day that Ben died. You are
Mm,
not reminding me. It's ever present in my life, and I think will
mm,
be forever. The same way that if you told me a story but that you remembered about my mom or my dad who've been gone for some time now, that's not reminding me that they died. I know that,
right,
right?
right.
So sending someone a text a year later is a huge gift because then they know they're not the only ones who remember. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing that other people remember is huge. I have a friend who texted me. So Ben died on September 26th, and she said she texted me on the 26th of the month, every month,
Mm,
just to say, thinking of you today. That was it, with no expectation that I need reply or that we were going to have some big, anything,
right.
but just to remind me that she remembered.
Right. And sending you some awesome energy. You know, it's nothing like that energy
Yeah.
that's in all of us. And then just to put that smile on your face, like, hi, I'm thinking of you, you know, that really does make a
Yeah. And
person
we're
feel
not doing it with the intention of cheering the person up. Like, we're not trying to make them happy,
right.
because part of what we want to do is allow for whatever they're feeling to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But to know that you're not alone and you're
Mm-hmm.
not the only one who remembers is huge. That gave me so much comfort to just know, and I had lots of people who would just at random moments text and say, "Hey,
Right.
thinking of you today, hoping you guys are doing okay." You know, whatever you have to say, it doesn't have to be big or elaborate or fancy. This is very basic kind of, reaching out for connection
Mm-hmm.
and just letting people know that you're still thinking of them
Right.
and you still remember. Because
Right.
really, you're right, exactly what you said early on. After that service, whatever it is happens, everyone scatters back to their normal lives. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I really was okay with that. Like, I got it intellectually that people needed to get back, that life carried on and their regular lives were there. But my regular life, my normal life didn't exist anymore. So it's also really isolating to see everyone scatter and go back to their regular life when yours doesn't exist. It's gone. And you can't get, no magic wand will get it back. So you're building something new that you're not sure what it is yet, and you're not sure even how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we decided very early on that our rule was going to be we would do one hard thing every day, because there's lots of hard things you have to do. As everybody knows, who's ever lost a loved one, around the stuff and the accounts and the just all kinds of hard things that you have to do. So we would do one hard thing a day, and then our to-do list was to breathe. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to give yourself permission to take the time to feel it all and have that be okay. Because otherwise it gets stuck. Otherwise you get stuck.
One of our viewers said, thanks so much. She just lost her dad and she's not okay.
Yeah.
She said, I understand the spiritual, but the natural man doesn't have understanding, never been through this. And she was so close to her dad. So,
Oh, I love that picture she's posted with him. That's so
yes,
beautiful.
yes. And this just shows that the journey you're on is out here helping people.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you would
And
tell
that's
us,
amazing.
yes, tell us more about what you do and what type of services you offer, Susan.
So what I'm really working on now is, as well as supporting grievers. So I do one-on-one coaching with people who are experiencing grief and loss.
Mhm.
And I'm really working hard to create workshops and courses for people who want to learn how to better show up. I think especially right now, when grief and loss is all around us, we're
Mhm.
all, there is an awareness that we just
Mhm.
don't know what to do. We
Mhm.
don't know how to show up. We don't know, as you said, like, we don't know what to say, so we don't say anything. And then we feel badly that we didn't say anything. And then time has passed and now it's too late to say anything. And now what the heck are we supposed to do? Like, and
Right.
we get on this awful cycle, right?
Right.
So, so what I'm really working on is trying to find ways to create community where when something happens and someone is experiencing grief and loss, people around them will have those skills. So I'm developing a course for business leaders, for example, so that workplaces could be more grief and
Mhm.
loss friendly. Because
Mhm.
most grievers, I don't know what it's like, you're in the States, right? I'm in Canada. Here, you're very lucky if you get 3 days off. And I'm going to tell you, nobody is finished grieving after
Right.
3 days.
Right.
It's just not how it is. So most of us are at work, even in those very early days. And if we can have workplaces that understand how to respond to grief and loss the same way that they would respond to maybe someone who has a broken leg, for example. Like, if I showed up at work with a broken leg, they would know what to do. They would get me a really great chair. They would get me a stool for my leg. They would adapt my duties. They would create a situation where I could be successful
Mhm.
at work. But we don't do that for someone who's in grief and loss because we don't know how. So that's really become a passion point for me, is trying to figure out how to broaden that conversation, how to help organizations and businesses really create places where for their staff and for their clients, customers, patients, students, whatever it is, that they have some capacity to show up for grievers. One of the things that was the hardest for me, and this may resonate with your lovely viewer who's in those early days having lost her dad, one of the things that was super hard for me was doing things like grocery shopping and going out in the world, because we have this transactional experience of how are you?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
anytime a cashier asked me, I just wanted to scream out loud because you don't care. And I'm a hot mess. And I just want to get in and out of here as fast as I can. So every time you're being asked to go out in the world, you're going to face people who want to say, oh, how are you? Why? Did you find everything you need? Is a great question if you're the cashier. Because it's a transactional interchange, right? And all the wishes to have a good day, I could not see a reality where I could have a good day. So
Mm-hmm.
when someone wished me have a good day, I just wanted to scream. Like I just couldn't take it. And then it was so fascinating. One day I was at a coffee shop or somewhere. It was a coffee shop because it was a barista who passed me my coffee and he said, I hope you have a good day. And just that tiny change in language, from it being like this demand that you have a good day, like this, it felt like this order that you must have a good day, to like, I hope you do, was a complete shift for me. It was so interesting how just that little change in language felt so much more welcoming of what my reality might be. Because if anybody knew, if we were still in an era where I had torn my shirt or I was wearing a black armband and someone knew I was deeply grieving, they would never say, have a good day, because it doesn't make any sense. But we don't have any of those markers anymore. So grievers are out and about in the world and having to deal all the time with these wishes of a good day, with the how are you, when the answer is supposed to be fine, but you can't even make that word come out of your mouth because it's so untrue. So that's really become a place where I can see space to be opening up these conversations and having people really build these skills that would help us as grievers out and about in the world, which we all are at some moment in our life. We are all going to be a griever out and about in the world. And so if we can create spaces where that's safe and where that doesn't feel like you're weird or abnormal or what's happening for you isn't right. Because when you're faced over and over again with these sort of normal interactions that you are unable to participate in, it can reinforce that story that what's happening to you isn't normal.
I mean, you have a very valid point. I mean, especially when you said about the job, once we go back to work, we only are given 3 days.
Yeah,
And you use that example when you break your leg, they'll give you, you can get a doctor's excuse to be off work up to, as long as the doctor tell you,
right.
that you have to get the clearance to go back to work. And so that's a very valid point that you are addressing, that we need to take grief and take that into consideration, because a person, where a leg is broken, or, we have a baby, we heal, but you really never fully heal from losing someone. Like, when you think about it from that concept, we actually heal when we go have surgery and they let us be off work for this extended period of time. And, when we have these different procedures done, we off work because we have to heal. But then when you think
Yeah,
about grief, you actually never heal. So I think that is a great mission that you're on, because society, do need to take a look at this a second time and make some changes in the workplace, and make some changes about how we deal about grief. This is a very, like I said, I love your mission. I love your mission. um our viewer said sometimes she just wants to be alone, and that the
hmm,
battle of grieving, but she still has to be a superwoman, that she
yeah,
be the superwoman. So that's what you were saying, is when you're out, they are expecting for you to be in a happy place, or how are you doing, but you
Yeah, like,
really can't express your true self, because we are conditioned. When I talk about the conditioning, we are conditioned.
yeah,
Hello, how are you? Fine. And you, it's like something we do on autopilot. It's
yeah,
like something we're conditioned to do. So, like Suzanne said, let's be more mindful of how we are addressing each other when we're crossing paths out in the day, because we don't know what an individual is going through. So, you know, you put some things on my mind for me to like be mindful of and aware of when we're going out and interacting, because I'm one that says, oh, it's a beautiful day. I don't even say good morning. I'm like, it's a beautiful day. So I can see how that could be taken. If a person is experiencing or going through grief, I can see how that could, impact them, because like you're saying, for one thing, we're not able to be transparent in the society that we live in. The social
yeah,
norm is not to really express yourself. You're supposed to, that they condition us to say, keep a smile on your face regardless of what you're going through.
yeah,
Whereas I'm the type of person that I'm like, transparency heals me, because if I'm acting one way, I call it impressive on the outside but oppressed behind closed doors. To
yeah,
me, is that I'm being double-minded. To me, it's like I'm having to put on a mask to come out and be something, and I really can't express my true emotion and my true self. So therefore, I am resisting against what I truly feel and how I truly feel, and I'm suppressing. So what happens to that energy? Because we're nothing but balls of energy. What
yeah,
happens? So I'm suppressing this, my true emotion, to exhibit what I think the world should see. So with you bringing this awareness to us and out here on these different platforms speaking about this is something as a society that we need to take a second look at. I think we need to sit down and like you said, let's talk about it more. And that's the whole purpose of Transparent Table Talk. We need to have these conversations. We need to be able to talk about things that's got us suffering in silence.
yeah,
And the society that we live in, it is so taboo to really be true, like to
yeah,
really express yourself. Like, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to let that show. Well, if I'm dealing with this, I think it causes a lot of illnesses. I think it causes a
absolutely.
lot what we call depression. I
Yep,
think it causes a lot of what we call anxiety, because we're not able to truly express ourselves and be and just really show. If you're saying how I'm doing, I'm having a lousy day. Why? I mean, or I'm feeling bad. Or like
yep,
you said, I'm a wreck. Like, do you all really want to know how I'm doing? So that's the reason why I have taken my mission on to say, we need to be able to talk about life from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place. We need to be able
yeah.
to do. We need to be able to
And
do
I
that.
think the other thing that happens too, just to riff on what you're saying, is when we are all out there performing, I call it performing, right? It's the
Exactly.
same idea. I'm
It is.
performing, I have it all
Right.
together, I'm
Right.
performing good employee, I'm performing
Right.
functioning person.
Right.
There's no ability, if we're all wearing that mask of
Exactly.
performance or, two-mindedness, there's no ability to create genuine connection.
Correct.
So
Correct.
now we're all disconnected from each other. We don't see each other's honesty. We don't see each other's vulnerability. We don't see each other's truth. And that is fracturing us all apart. I think, that's what we're
It is.
seeing. The result of that is that we've all been busy performing,
Yes, wearing the mask. I said we
and
were
with
wearing the
whatever
mask
mask on,
before
like we're all
coronavirus.
busy being fine, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is, nobody's ever been fine. It's just not even a
Mm-hmm.
real word that means anything anymore. But because we're all so busy being it, there's no ability to have that depth of connection that we all desperately crave, right? We all want to be connected. We're human beings are social creatures. That's how we are. That's how we are. That's just how we are. That's that simple. And so if we can't create genuine connection, if we can't create spaces where it's okay to be vulnerable and honest and truthful, then we get more and more fractured and fragmented. And
And
that's
they
not
treat
serving
society,
anybody.
those of us that's transparent and humble and vulnerable, you get treated like you're the outcast. You get treated
Yep.
like you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to let a person really know how you feel. Like, I'm in a place in my life that I can tell somebody if they hurt my feelings or if I'm
Mm-hmm.
disappointed, rather than putting on that mask, like, I can't express how I feel or it doesn't bother me. No, I'm not gonna carry that energy around. I'm not going to walk around like everything is okay. And it's very difficult having relationships as an
Yep.
adult because I am that person that speaks from a humble, transparent, and vulnerable place, because I am that person that's okay with expressing what it is I feel. Because, if we really want to look at it from a spiritual place, we're supposed to be transparent. We're supposed to tell
Yep.
somebody you're offended. We're supposed to be able to express ourselves, because to keep a clean heart, that means I'm supposed to express myself. We're supposed to be able to have the courageous conversations. And
Yep.
like saying that, we were conditioned to come out and wear the mask. We were conditioned to come out and perform. And that's the reason why the show was created, Suzanne, because I witnessed this and out here in this world. Suzanne, just to give you some background information about me, I am 45 years old. I have 4 children, ages 30, 28, 18, and 15. I've been on my own since I was 15 years old. I've been living as an adult. And on my life journey, I discovered that very early, that the world conditioned us to come out and wear masks, that we really can't
Mm-hmm.
be our true, authentic selves. And so that's the reason why the whole free to be me that you hear in my music, Bougie Wow, come from people criticizing me when I was able to grow and evolve outside of my social norms. Some call me
Yeah.
bougie, some call me wild. So the whole purpose that I'm showing people in life is that we are going through things, that we are wearing masks, that we can't have these conversations due to fear of what somebody would say about us, or due
Mm-hmm.
to the need to fit in and the fear of rejection. So that's the purpose that Transparent Table Talk was created, because I discovered it at a very young age. A lot of people
Yeah.
tell me, you realize this at your age? I'm like, yeah. The conditioning has us suffering. The
Yeah.
conditioning, I was having a conversation with a young lady the other day, and she was, I'm on this mission to show people that we should be able to be our true, authentic selves without any fear of rejection or the need to fit in. My boundaries are, I don't kill, steal, or destroy. But I feel like I should be able to be myself without fear of criticism. I feel like you shouldn't stereotype me, because
Mm-hmm.
I choose to be who I am. I'm loud, I'm outgoing, I have a lot of energy. I like to have fun. And a lot of times people try to condition you and put you in a box. And
Mm-hmm.
the same way you're saying, with the grief, we put it in a box. We put it in a
Yep.
box and we put it on the shelf. We didn't want to address it. And so that's the reason why I'm out here on this mission, and Transparent Table Talk was created, so that we can have these open conversations, so that we can discuss things that ordinarily are difficult topics to talk about, so that we can address that we're not okay, but we're conditioned to be told, like, oh, you need to be okay. You don't let people know what you're really going through. You're supposed
Yeah.
to come out here and act like you got it all together. No, you got people
Yeah.
suffering in silence because society have conditioned us that you don't supposed to be a certain way. But when you look at the word, that the book that was left for us to live by, it's like we're not following it. It's like we're truly not following it, because if we were, we wouldn't tell people that there's something wrong with you expressing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all here to be our own unique expression, and yet we're being expected to be in some kind of performative box situation where we never are honest with anybody.
Right, never honest. I
It's
mean,
nonsensical. It's nonsensical.
it and I when I have this conversation and I'm telling people, I'm like, there are people out in the world that understands my message. They're like,
Yep.
no, the social norm is this, and it's just been that way, and this is how you're supposed to do. And I'm like, no. I went to Miami for 7 days, Miss Susan. For 7 days, I met people from all over the world. I was by myself in Miami for 7 days, and I go out in the world sometimes by myself. I have these conversations, and I met a lot of people out in the world by themselves because
Yeah.
they were tired of social norm. They woke up
Yes.
from it and they
Yes.
realized that, you know what, this have me conform, this have me living in a box. I can't be my true authentic self. And a lot of us wait, like I talk to all age people, all ethnicities, colors, races, background from different places. We all are experiencing it. And
Yep.
a lot of people tell me that's older than I am, like in their 60s, late 60s and 70s. And they said, we didn't get it at your age. But the older you
Yeah.
get, you realize, you know what? I'm gonna be me. I'm taking off the mask. Like I'm taking it off. I'm
Yep.
taking it off. I'm gonna be free to be me. But we, how many years we wasted, and then that conversation, like I said, people don't even like to have. People don't even
Yep.
like to have the real conversation. Like I tell people, I said I can have up to 10 guests, and I want to do a show. I'm gathering people from different races, different countries, and I'm going to bring them together on Transparent Table Talk because I get told, oh no, that's not, it's what's going on. It's social norm. You got to realize that when you're out here, you got to watch what you do because that could affect your way of life and that could
Yep.
affect how people judge you. And I'm like, no, like I am an accountant. My personality, that who I am, shouldn't have nothing to do with my professional side. My professional side of life speaks for itself. That is why you
Yep.
have referrals. That is why you have clients that,
Yep.
that from their experience know that you're going to take care of them. Like I am a person that loves to serve. So that comes to me natural with making sure that I take care of whoever I have to serve in my professional capacity. But when I'm off work and I'm just Yolanda, you're going to let me be Yolanda. Like
Yeah.
that's the world we live in though. I'm so glad because I am so passionate about that. Like it's let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we're really made to wear this mask out here.
Yeah. And for me, that was what was so interesting about, that's one of the places that I was curious, back to that whole conscious and curious concept. I had literally no capacity for performance. I couldn't. Like like of all the things I lost that. I lost many things. That was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't. So like I had no capacity to do anything but take care of myself and take care of my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her in the early days, I'm like, you know what? Like I'm here for me and you, and everyone else is gonna have to figure it out. Because I am not here to be good sister or good friend or good whatever the heck I was busy being. This needs to be about what do we need? How do we survive this? How do we put our lives back together? And that ability to perform completely evaporated. And I'm okay with that, actually. I'm kind of grateful. And I had been on a path of kind of releasing that already. So it wasn't like a big shock that that was one of the things that went, because I was already kind of. I remember a friend of mine, a dear, dear friend of mine, saying to me when I was turning 40, she said, oh, you're going to love 40 because you don't have to worry so much about what people think. And I looked at her and I said, oh, was I supposed to wait till I turned 40 for that? I'm like, oops, like I didn't get that memo that I was supposed to be like on my good behavior till I was 40. So I've been on a long journey of like not worrying about it. But I think even for those of us on that, working our way through that, we're so conditioned and so enculturated that it's this weird combination of like fiercely myself and a recovering people pleaser, right? Because we still have those voices in our head that are like, well, you can't talk about grief. Well, why are you talking about that? Why would you share? Why would you air your dirty laundry, as it were? Why would you
Yes.
go out
Yeah.
there and tell your story? Well, because people need to know the truth.
It said the
It's
truth
really
sets us free.
hard,
Yes.
right? Grief is hard. You need to feel it all.
Right.
You're gonna literally lose your mind. Your brain fog will be intense. You won't be able to process things. You won't be able to remember where anything is, and you won't be able to do things to take multiple steps. You just won't. I've never used my GPS so much in my entire life. I've lived in the city I live in since I was 8, and I use my GPS all the time to get around this city I know like the back of my hand, because my brain cannot process multiple step things. And that's just part of grief. But nobody
Mhm.
tells you that. Nobody tells you how disrupted your sleep is going to be. No one tells you how your circulation is going to go all wonky and you're going to be too cold and too hot and your feet are going to tingle. There's so many physical symptoms no one tells you about. So for me, I think, well, no, I have the capacity. I'm okay with people understanding my story. And if my story and my experience can help someone else, like your lovely viewer who's just lost her father, feel less alone, feel less like they're losing their mind, feel less like nobody understands what's happening. Even if the only person that understands is me, that's one person who understands, and you're not alone because there's two of us. And
Mhm.
I'm here to tell you there's a lot more than two of us who are having all of these experiences and feeling
Mhm.
all of these things and struggling to find people that will talk about it. Or
Mm.
just sit quietly while we do, right?
Right.
That was a
Right.
huge gift too, right? Just show
Right.
up and sit quietly and
Right.
let me babble and I'll be okay. But it's
Right.
hard. It's hard because we haven't built the skills.
And you made a very valid point about the skills. I don't even think, it's one of those things that I think we've just run from. Like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry for your loss, and we just be sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
Because we're scared, right? We don't want it to touch us. We think somehow it's contagious. It's
right.
not. We
Mm-hmm.
think somehow, if we remind the person, their emotions will be too big for us to handle. They
Mm.
won't. The emotions are mine to handle. They're not for you to handle. They're all mine. I'm a grown up. Even with a child, you can't handle their emotions for them. You have to teach them how. And we just have this weird sense that if we don't talk about it, it won't touch us.
Mm.
But it's going to touch us. It's the one for sure thing that we will all experience. We will all have loss. We will all need to grieve. And if you think about, I call it my cathedral project. My cathedral project has become making the support that shows up for people when they're in grief and loss the
Mm-hmm.
same as the support that shows up for people when they get pregnant and have a baby.
Mm.
So think about those two ends of life, right? As soon as people find out you're pregnant, support comes flooding to you. Strangers approach you on the street to tell you all about their pregnancy stories, right? People show up to help. People bring stuff. People ask you what you need. People help for most of us. And I understand this is not everybody's story, and I don't want to diminish experiences that aren't like that. But as a collective, we know how to show up for somebody. And through the baby years, the toddler, how many
You
complete
make a
strangers
point.
approached you in the store with your babies to say, "Oh, they're so pretty. Oh, they're so cute. Oh, blah, blah, blah. How old? You're having you can't get the grocery shopping done because you can't get through the aisles with your baby because everybody wants to talk to you."
Right. Right.
There's books, there's classes, there's step-by-step guides, there's tons of support. There's a doctor to help you. But at the other end, there's crickets.
Mm.
And that doesn't make sense to me.
Because, like you said, the birthing process, just think from conception to the pregnancy of 9 months, and like you said, it's a lifelong. It's a lifelong journey. It's a journey. It's an
Yeah.
everlasting journey, and like you said, it doesn't stop at death. It doesn't
No.
stop. So, this lifelong journey that starts, you know, uh, early on, and it goes through death. It's like we want to put it on the shelf, and then we can't grieve. So I hear you. That was a great analogy. I could like visualize that as
Yeah,
you
but
were
imagine
saying.
if when you were grieving, people showed up and knew what to
Right,
say and knew how to
right,
support you and
right,
shared their stories in a compassionate way.
right.
Like, how different would that be?
Mm-hmm.
instead of feeling all alone, instead of feeling like you're losing your mind, instead of feeling like no one else is going through what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have the skills. We've built them at one end and run away from the other. And that's what needs to shift.
I agree. I agree. So, Susan, thank you so much for coming on Transparent Table Talk. I want you to tell people how to find you, and what you can offer them, just so that they
Okay,
know.
absolutely. So you can find me at my website, which is alivedexperience.com. Oh, look, there it is, magically on the screen. I love a good tech support person. So you can find me there. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And then there's links there to my social media. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, under the same handle. So you can find my work there. Lots of writing about my experience and how I dealt with it and continue to deal with it. So if you're feeling alone and you're feeling no one understands, hopefully you'll find some peace there. And then there's a page there too that has the different work that I do with people. So I regularly run workshops. I don't think the next schedule is up because the January schedule is still there, but I regularly run workshops. I do one-on-one coaching with people who are grieving. Next I'm coming for the business leaders and the organizational leaders, and that'll be the next workshop and course that shows up is for those people to just build those skills, build those capacities. It's not anything we need to be ashamed about. We haven't been taught how to do it. We haven't learned together how to do it. So if we can take the shame and the judgment out of it that we put on ourselves when we don't know how to show up for someone, then we have that opening where we can learn. And then we can connect.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And you have a very powerful message that you're sharing with us, because I've learned a lot today during this 1 hour.
Thank
Transparent
you.
Table Talk, you guys. It's a place where
Love it.
we speak about life from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place to bring awareness to those topics that's causing people shame and blame, and working to heal people, because we all go through the same thing. So make
Yeah.
sure you all tune in to Transparent Table Talk on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you so much again, Miss Susan. I am
Thank
your
you so much for having me.
Bougie Wap. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bourgeois, 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 bourgeois. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bourgeois, 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 bourgeois. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougie wild can't be boxed. I'm free to be me. I'm living life, creating legacy. I'm living my dream. They call me extra. They say I'm doing too much. I'm just bougie wild, 'cause I'm classy with some bourgeois, 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 bourgeois. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bourgeois, 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 bourgeois. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougie wild can't be. Give a damn. Bourgeois, 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 bourgeois. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougie wild is loving yourself, it's knowing yourself, it's trusting yourself, it's being yourself. Yeah. Hey. Bougie wild is loving yourself, it's being yourself, it's being yourself, it's expressing yourself.